Hi everyone, and welcome to the first video tutorial for ANTH 562 GIS, Archaeological GIS, and Geospatial Technologies. This video is going to be an introduction to QGIS, which is the first GIS piece of software that we're going to use in the class. To start off with, you need to get yourself into the Project 1 document, and if you're on the course Canvas page, you can get to it in a couple different ways. You can either click on Report 1 in the first module, and you get a direct link to it over here, or a sort of shortcut to it is to go straight to the course Google Drive, which you click in will open up this, and everything should be under projects here. And you go to Project 1, and you can get to the Google Doc by clicking here. So essentially, you're going to start by following along in the Google Doc and with these video tutorials to complete. Eventually, after a few weeks, you'll complete the project that is outlined in this text file here, and you'll write your technical report. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get closer to that time. We're going to be working again in QGIS, and we're going to be working with archaeological data from the Wadi Hassa region of central Jordan. And you can read a little bit about the background here, but briefly, these are pedestrian surveys conducted over a couple of decades by two different survey teams. And I have also done fieldwork in this region, which is how I collected all of this previous data, and I have essentially done a lot to bring all of that we call legacy data or older data up into the 21st century so that we can use it in GIS to do these kinds of analysis. And if you want to dive deeper, the paper that's linked from this link here will tell you all about the background of this stuff in great detail. You don't necessarily have to do it, but I think it would be useful to at least take a look at that to get a better sense of what kind of archaeology we're talking about when we're dealing with this stuff. But for today, what we're really going to do is to try and install QGIS either on your own laptop, or again here in the lab we have it installed on the computers. So if you don't have a laptop or a home computer, or you don't want to, or you have trouble installing it, you can always come into the open lab hours and work over here. The other thing that we're going to do is to download the sample data. But first things first, you can just click the link to take you to QGIS, the QGIS website, or very simply type in qgis.org into your web browser. You can read all about the software, the community, the background of it and all that stuff. And there's a bunch of documentation and all of this other kind of stuff. But really what you want to do now is go to the download page. And it will ask you for a donation. You are under absolutely no obligation to do this. If at some point in the future you feel like it's worth it, you can consider donating to the project. It is a charitable donation if you decide to do that. But you can click skip if you'd like for now anyway and move forward. So it's going to automatically try and figure out what platform, meaning what operating system you're working with, whether that's a Mac or a PC with Windows, or in my case, it's Linux, right? Essentially, you'll be directed to where you should be downloading the software for your computer. If you're downloading for Windows, you actually have a couple of options. You can either choose to do the standalone version or something called the OSGeo4W installer. There are pluses and minuses to either approach, but since we are eventually going to install GRASS GIS, you might consider using the OSGeo4W because it's like a clearinghouse for all of the open source GIS software for Windows. And if you would choose to install it this way, there'll be better compatibility between QGIS and GRASS when you get to it. So you can click on this link and follow the instructions there. If that doesn't work for you or you don't want to try it that way, you can install the standalone installers. Now there are two versions. There's the long-term support version, which is 3.34, and the latest version, 3.40. There are a few new things that were introduced in 3.40, but generally speaking, there's not going to be a huge amount of difference between them. So if you're daring and you enjoy using the very latest pieces of software, go ahead for 3.4.0. Otherwise, 3.34 is the long-term support release, the one where you're not going to have to update it in 6 months or something like that, and it's going to be supported and better supported by your computer, so less chance of there having problems. So you could consider to do that. Again, the OSGeo 4W is probably the best way for us in this class because we are eventually going to install grass. For Mac OS, you basically have these two versions, the 3.4.0 or the 3.34. And there is going to be an issue when you try and initially start it, so make sure you read this tips for the first launch. This is something that Mac does. It is probably a good thing for security, but it is a little bit annoying for open source software projects because they do require licenses and stuff to be paid to Mac in order to be official software. This software is safe. It's very well vetted. Don't worry about installing viruses or anything like that. It's going to be okay. Just follow the instructions for your Mac OS. You need to know which version of Mac. Probably most of you have newer computers. You're going to be on this one, but in case you have an older Mac, it might be these instructions up here. So essentially, you're going to have to open the security settings and unblock QGIS to allow it to be used, okay? So follow along with those things and you can get the software installed. If you have problems, we can work together to make it happen on your computer, or again, you can come into the lab and use these. So once QGIS is installed, you can open it. And depending on your operating system, this will be done in a different way. You know, from Windows, you got the little start menu in the bottom. For Mac, you have the applications folder. And for me, it's the same deal. I have applications up here, so I'm just going to click on QGIS. And I have installed the long-term support version because, again, it's just works a little bit better on my system. I'm going to be jumping back and forth between various computers when I record these, but today I'm on my laptop, so it may be 1 or 2 times I'd be on my other computer in my office and that I've installed 3.4, but basically there's no huge difference. The first time you start QGIS, you may get some little tips that pop up and say, you know, do you want to keep receiving tips? I have turned that off because I use QGIS frequently, but you can choose to keep that on for a little bit, and maybe you'll find the tips helpful. As you start to use it, your recent projects are going to be saved and they're going to show up over here, and then you'll have this like news area, which you can just go ahead and turn off. It'll then show you this sort of project templates. You have the browser, define where your data is. You have your layer view over here, and then over here, this is a tooltip area that I have turned on, but you probably won't. Other than that, you have essentially a bunch of menu items across the top. And then you have some sort of menu shortcuts with these little icons. And you know, yours may be a little bit different, but you'll have kind of the same thing. So you can explore this without any data to start with. You can you know, follow along with QGIS documentation if you would like. But you know, I'm the kind of person that learns by doing. So the first thing that I suggest that we all do is to go back to the Project 1 file or to the Google Drive in Project 1 and to download this Wadi Hassa zip, right? So if you're in this text file, you can click here and then click again. And when it's opening up from Google Drive, it will show you this like so. And it'll ask you open with, but instead you want to click over here where it says download. And then it'll do another round like so. And now you need to figure out where you want to install it. Now, by default, it might select your downloads folder, and I suggest you don't put it in your downloads folder. Instead, try and find a more sensible place. You could put it on the desktop, but I'm going to put it, you know, in my home folder and then under documents, and then I'm going to create a new folder here called QGIS data. That way I will know if I'm organized that everything that I'm going to do in QGIS from here on out is going to be saved into QGIS data, and that way I won't lose my data. Once it downloads, you can navigate either like I did for my web browser or through your file system to your home documents QGIS data folder, which you can see up here, and you'll find the wadihasa.zip. You're going to, in Windows right-click or Linux right-click, or in Mac command-click to open up the dialog, and you're going to extract it. This is a zip archive, so you need to extract it, and you will see the wadihasa folder appear within the QGIS data folder. You can technically delete the zip file if you'd like, but you might want to keep it for now just in case you screw things up and you want to go back to point zero. You can go back and re-extract this and overwrite everything that you've done. So inside the wadihasa folder, you're going to find an example QGIS project that you can work with. And let me talk you through the way that I've organized this, because this is good data hygiene practice. So again, we created a QGIS data master folder. All of our QGIS projects will live as separate folders inside that. So wadihasa is a project, and everything we're going to do for this wadihasa project, we're going to keep inside that. So we're nesting already. At the next level down, inside the wadihasa folder, you should have two folders, raster and vector, and then this is the project file that QGIS uses to save the configurations. Everything that you're looking at in QGIS will be saved to this q.qgz file. Underneath the raster data files that we're going to be using in this project, we're going to put into here. If we go back, we also have one for vector data, and here we're also going to keep files that are vector formats. We're going to keep in here. In this particular case, we have subfolders because we're working with shapefiles. These are legacy data, so they came as shapefiles. And as you see, a shapefile is actually composed of multiple individual computer files, and we need to keep these all together. So if you're working with something that's a shapefile, you should keep it all in one folder with the same name as the files that are inside of it. So we have WHS sites, that's the Wadihasa survey, and then we have the WHNBS, Wadihasa North Bank survey, and this one is just a CSV, but I still put it inside its own folder. And then the other thing here are database codes, and we're going to need those a little bit later on to understand some of the codes that were used during those surveys for the type of site and for the time period and for the landforms that they were working on. Okay, so now that we've seen all of this, the QGZ file is the one that's going to get us where we want to go. So if we go back to QGIS, the simplest way is to go to Project and then Open, and then you can navigate to Documents, QGIS Data, Wadihasa, and then the Wadihasa QGIS project.qgz. And we do this depending on how it goes. You may get a couple errors saying this was done in an older version of QGIS, but let's just click Apply Changes and then Remove Unavailable, and then click OK, and here we go. Okay, so at this particular moment, it didn't load in the QGIS, the sites points, but we can load those in manually. It loaded in the raster file, which is a DEM, a digital elevation model, showing the elevations in the Wadihasa. Wadi means valley. I'm going to move myself lower here. And this big valley here is the Wadihasa. And you can see there's a lot of the surrounding area included in the DEM tile. And I have named this with the data source, Shuttle Radar Topography Mission, SRTM, and the horizontal resolution, 30 meters horizontal resolution. So each pixel in this is 30 meters. So now we have that loaded in as a base file. Let's go ahead and load in the sites points. And we can do this in a variety of ways. We could go to the layer menu and we can go to add layer and add vector layer. And then we would have to find where it says vector data set, click on the three dots, and then navigate to the QGIS data, Wadihasa, vector, WHS sites, and then it's the .shp file that we double click, and then we click add and close, and there they are. Okay, so that's one way to do it. I'm gonna right click on this and then just remove it so that I can show you another way to do this. The next way to do this is in the browser, project home. If we're working in a QGIS project, it will always have a project home in here. Click the little arrow next to it and you'll see those folders. So this is essentially like another version of your file browser for you to navigate through your folders. But project home will get you right to the base. Wherever that .qgz file lives, that's where project home is going to be. Then we can go to vector. And similarly, we can go to WHS sites and click on the SHP file, and there we go again. Those are probably the two easiest ways to do it in terms of not going wrong. You can technically also drag and drop from your file browser. So let me just remove that again and bring back in my file browser window, which is not that one, but this one. And sorry, I made myself big. That's silly. Let me make myself small again. I'm gonna put myself over here, I guess. There we go. Sort of. You know what? I'm just going to close myself down. You don't need to look at my face anymore. Okay. So, sorry. What I was trying to do was to show you how you can go into the vector folder, WHS sites, grab the SHP one, and just sort of drag it over here. And now you can see that they're loaded in as well. So there are multiple ways to add a layer to QGIS. The drag and drop, I guess, technically is the simplest, but I think there's a danger there in that you don't know if you're dragging and dropping from the correct project folder into your layer manager. So probably the best way is to navigate from project home in the browser, and then you can basically make sure that you're getting the right vector file, the right raster file. Okay. So at this point, what you can do is to start to explore it. By default, the little hand tool, which is the pan, the click and drag. So I'm just using my trackpad or my mouse to click, holding down the click and drag it around. And you can also, using your mouse scroll wheel or two fingers on your trackpad, you can go in and out to zoom. And so you can kind of zoom in on an area. You can also use these zooming tools and where you can draw a sort of bounding box to zoom in and or to zoom out. You can also just click once and it will zoom out by a set amount, or click again to zoom in by a set amount. And then this one with all of the three arrows, it'll zoom to the full extent of all of your GIS layers, where their boundaries are. So if you've zoomed like way in like this and you're like, I don't know where I am, you can always click that to bring you back out to where you need to go. And you can explore what some of these others do. Zooming to layer, so whichever layer you have selected. So for example, the sites are a little bit smaller. We click zoom to layer and it'll zoom in just to the extent of whatever layer or layers you have highlighted over here in the layer window. Also, you should know that these are ordered from top to bottom like pieces of paper, right? So imagine a transparency overlay. Whatever is higher up in the layer manager is going to be on top of the stack of transparency. So if I drag this one underneath, oh no, it disappeared, but it's really still there. It's just underneath the DEM, and the DEM is basically like opaque, right, for now. So I can just drag that back underneath or drag the other one on top, and then they reappear on top like so. So explore some of that. We'll talk about some of these other tools as we go along. The only other one that you might need to know is to zoom back to your last extent. It's sort of like a redo undo for zoom, so it can be kind of handy. And for now, I think we're going to leave most of that alone. The only other thing that you might want to do is to explore some of these other kind of like tools to measure distances and this kind of stuff. You can fool around with some of these things on your own to see what they do. For now, the last thing I want to show you is how to alter the appearance of your data files, the ones that we have here. So over here in the Layer Manager, you're going to right-click or control-click or double-click to get to the properties. And when the properties pop up, you're going to have all of this stuff over here on the right. And mine, for whatever reason, do that. So I just grab here so I can see what I'm doing. You may be automatically on the Information tab, but what we want to do is to get to the Symbology tab. The rest of the stuff we'll cover maybe a little bit later. But for now, we'll go to the Symbology. Because what we're working with here is a vector points file, we have marker and then simple marker, right? These are basically two layers of style. If you're up here where it says marker, you can choose some default styles. So that might be the simplest thing. Let's just click purple dot, click OK, and now we can see it automatically changed it to this predefined purple dot style. So I just double clicked there to open the properties back out. If I didn't like that, I could go back in to find one of the other defaults. Now, that's useful just as a quick shortcut. You can change the overall size in millimeters to make them smaller, like so. Very simple to do. If you want finer control over all of these things, click this lower level where it says marker and then underneath simple marker, and it opens up a whole bunch of finer control. You can change to different shapes now. You can change the color, in a very fine way. So I can make it any shade of red, and I can even change it to be a little bit transparent, which might be nice. That's a little too transparent, like so. And I can change the size again. I can choose millimeters, or I can choose points, pixels, all of that kind of stuff. And then when I click OK, you can see how I've picked plus marks. I've made them slightly, I'll zoom in here, slightly transparent. And as I zoom in, you can see the effects of all of that. So explore for the vector points, explore some of that, and you may not like what I have just done. You can choose, any number of other sizes and shapes and colors and transparencies and all of that kind of stuff. And depending on how it goes, for example, the one that I just did, the color of the interior is purple, but the color of the lines is this transparent red. So I may want to change that and make everything red, make them all sort of transparent like so. And now we've done that like this. Okay, so that is the basics of styling for vectors. Let's now go to the underlying raster file, go back to our property menu, and make sure that we are on the band rendering or the symbology tab. By default, it'll be single band gray, so it basically makes a grayscale. So all the low values will be black, and all the higher values will be sort of closer to white, right? From black to white. If we want to change that to a color spread, a color ramp, we change from single band gray to single band pseudo color. And by default, it's going to load in this ramp. So let's just see what that looks like with the defaults. And this particular color scheme is called viridis, and it goes from this dark, dark, dark purpley blue through other shades of blue, through shades of green, and then to yellow. And it is a nice color palette for digital elevation models. But you may want to change it to something different. So we can go back in here and click on the ramp, and we can set custom values like so. Now, you might end up screwing up your colors by doing custom, so what you need to do is to make sure you see this little arrow, so mine kind of hides it, so I made the window bigger. But if you click that, we have a whole bunch of sort of pre-packaged color ramps. We just have a smaller set of default ones, so I'm just going to pick this turbo color scheme. Whoa, you can see this nice rainbow color here. And we can go back into that tab and go to where it says all color ramps, and then you can see we have a whole bunch of additional ones. And you can get real custom with this, and again, like I showed you before, pick color ramps that mean something to you, or you can just pick some of the defaults. The one that I picked here, it has a predefined diverging color palette where 0 is white and negative numbers are red and positive numbers are shades of blue. And yes, it goes below sea level over here. This is the Jordan Valley, close to the Dead Sea. So it's definitely showing below 0 on this particular map as well. Okay, so at this particular moment, I think I'm going to stop the tutorial for now. You can continue to explore symbology and what some of these other things end up doing. For example, you can change to different interpolation of the colors, and you can change the way that the breaks of the colors are made, and that definitely changes the way that they're rendering. But I want you to explore that to figure it out on, kind of a little bit on your own. Really, right now, all we're trying to do is to get familiar with the software and to get familiar with how to sort of navigate and to style the thing itself. Eventually, I'll show you tricks like how to actually open and interrogate some of the numerical data, but for now, that is not super important for what we're trying to do in this particular practicum. All right, that's it for now, and we'll see you on Monday in our next class.